A person who is successful is not required to provide explanations for their success. Conversely, a person who fails permits no excuses or alibis for their failure. This chapter details the sixth step on the path to riches, which is the crystallization of your intangible desire into concrete action. You have already learned that every single thing a person creates or acquires has its beginning in the form of a desire. You also learned that this desire is taken on the first leg of its journey, moving from the abstract to the tangible into the workshop of the imagination. It is in that workshop that plans for the desire's transition are created and organized, in the second chapter. You were instructed to take 6 definite, practical steps as your initial move in translating the desire for money into its financial equivalent. One of the most critical of these steps is the formation of a definite, practical plan or a series of plans through which this transformation can be accomplished. You will now be instructed on how to build plans that are practical and effective. First, you must A. ally yourself with a group of as many people as you may require for the creation and the execution of your plan, or plans for accumulating wealth. In doing this, you will be making use of the mastermind principle, which will be described in greater detail in a later chapter. It must be stated that compliance with this instruction is absolutely essential. Do not neglect this step. Second, B. Before you form your mastermind alliance, you must decide what specific advantages and benefits you are able to offer the individual members of your group in exchange for their cooperation. No person is going to work indefinitely without receiving some form of compensation. Furthermore, no intelligent person will either request or expect another individual to work for them without adequate compensation. Although it is important to note that this compensation may not always be in the form of money. Third, C. You must arrange to meet with the members of your mastermind group at least 2 times a week. If it is possible, you should meet more often than that. You must continue these regular meetings until you have jointly perfected the necessary plan, or plans for the accumulation of money. Fourth, D. You must maintain a state of perfect harmony between yourself and every single member of your mastermind group. If you fail to carry out this instruction to the letter, you can expect to meet with failure. The mastermind principle cannot exist or function where perfect harmony does not prevail. It is vital that you keep these facts in mind. First, you are engaged in an undertaking that is of major importance to you. To be certain of success, you are required to have plans that are faultless. Second, to create such plans, you must have the advantage of the experience, the education, the native ability, and the imagination of other minds. This approach is in complete harmony with the methods that have been followed by every person who has ever accumulated a great fortune. No single individual possesses sufficient experience, education, native ability, and knowledge to ensure the accumulation of a great fortune without the cooperation of other people. Every plan you adopt in your endeavor to accumulate wealth should be the joint creation of yourself and every other member of your mastermind group. While you may originate your own plans, either in whole or in part, you must see to it that those plans are checked and approved by the members of your mastermind alliance. If the very first plan that you adopt does not work successfully, you must replace it with a new plan. If this new plan then fails to work, you must replace it, in turn, with yet another plan, and continue this process until you find a plan that does work. It is right at this exact point that the majority of people meet with failure. This is because of their lack of persistence in creating new plans to take the place of those that have failed. The most intelligent person alive cannot succeed in accumulating money or in any other undertaking without plans that are practical and workable. You must keep this fact in your mind, and you must remember, when your plans fail, that a temporary defeat is not a permanent failure. A defeat may only mean that your plans have not been sound. Your response must be to build other plans and start all over again. Thomas I. Edison failed 10,000 times before he perfected the incandescent electric light bulb. To be precise, he met with temporary defeat 10,000 times before his efforts were finally crowned with success. Temporary defeat should mean only one thing to you: the certain knowledge that there is something wrong with your plan. Millions of men go through life in misery and poverty simply because they lack a sound plan through which to accumulate a fortune. Henry Ford accumulated a vast fortune, not because his mind was superior to others, but because he adopted and followed a plan which proved to be sound. One could easily point out 1,000 men, each with a better education than Ford's, yet each of whom lives in poverty. They live in poverty because they do not possess the right plan for the accumulation of money. Your achievement can be no greater than your plans are sound. This may seem like an obvious axiomatic statement, but it is true. A powerful example of this can be seen in the story of Samuel Insull, who lost a fortune that was estimated to be over $100 million. The Insull fortune was originally built on plans that were sound. However, the economic depression forced Mr. Insull to change his plans. This change brought temporary defeat because his new plans were not sound. Mr. Insull, being an older man, might consequently accept this as failure instead of temporary defeat. But if his experience ultimately turns out to be permanent failure, it will be for the reason that he lacks the fire of persistence to rebuild his plans. No person is ever truly whipped until they quit in their own mind. This fact will be repeated many times throughout our journey, because it is so easy to take the count at the first sign of difficulty or defeat. James J. Hill met with temporary defeat when he first endeavored to raise the necessary capital to build a railroad from the east to the west. But he, too, turned that defeat into victory by creating new plans. Henry Ford also met with temporary defeat, not only at the beginning of his automobile career, but even after he had gone far toward the top. He simply created new plans and went marching on to financial victory. We often see people who have accumulated great fortunes, but we usually recognize only their triumph. We overlook the temporary defeats which they had to surmount before they arrived. No follower of this philosophy can reasonably expect to accumulate a fortune without experiencing temporary defeat. When defeat comes, you must accept it as a signal that your plans are not sound. Your duty is to rebuild those plans and set sail once more toward your coveted goal. If you give up before your goal has been reached, you are what is known as a quitter. A quitter never wins, and a winner never quits. Take this sentence, write it on a piece of paper in letters an inch high, and place it where you will see it every night before you go to sleep and every morning before you go to work. When you begin to select members for your mastermind group, endeavor to select those who do not take defeat seriously. Some people foolishly believe that only money can make money. This is not true. Desire, when transmuted into its monetary equivalent through the principles laid down here, is the agency through which money is made. Money, by itself, is nothing but inert matter. It cannot move, think, or talk, but it can hear when a person who desires it calls it to come. The remainder of this chapter is dedicated to a description of the ways and means of marketing personal services. The information conveyed here will be of practical help to any person who has any form of personal services to market, but it will be of priceless benefit to those who aspire to leadership in their chosen occupations. Intelligent planning is essential for success in any undertaking that is designed to accumulate riches. Here, you will find detailed instructions for those who must begin the accumulation of riches by selling their personal services. It should be encouraging for you to know that practically all the great fortunes began either in the form of compensation for personal services or from the sale of ideas. After all, What else, except for ideas and personal services, would a person who does not possess property have to give in return for riches? Broadly speaking, there are two types of people in the world. One type is known as leaders, and the other is known as followers. You must decide at the outset whether you intend to become a leader in your chosen calling, or, if you intend to remain a follower. The difference in compensation between the two is vast. The follower cannot reasonably expect the compensation to which a leader is entitled, although many followers make the mistake of expecting such pay. It is no disgrace to be a follower. On the other hand, it is no credit to remain a follower. Most great leaders began their journey in the capacity of followers. They became great leaders because they were intelligent followers, with very few exceptions. The person who cannot follow a leader intelligently cannot become an efficient leader themselves. The person who can follow a leader most efficiently is usually the person who develops into leadership most rapidly. An intelligent follower has many advantages, among them the opportunity to acquire knowledge from their leader. Let us now examine the major attributes of leadership. The following are the important factors required for leading others effectively. Unwavering courage. This courage must be based upon knowledge of oneself and of one's occupation. No follower wishes to be dominated by a leader who lacks self-confidence and courage. No intelligent follower will be dominated by such a leader for very long. Self-control. The individual who cannot control himself can never control others. Self-control sets a powerful example for one's followers, which the more intelligent among them will emulate. A keen sense of justice. Without a sense of fairness and justice, no leader can command and retain the respect of his followers. Definiteness of decision. The person who wavers in their decisions demonstrates that they are not sure of themselves. Such a person cannot lead others successfully. Definiteness of plans. The successful leader must plan his work and then work his plan. A leader who moves by guesswork without practical, definite plans is comparable to a ship without a rudder. Sooner or later, he will land on the rocks. The habit of doing more than paid. 4. One of the penalties of leadership is the necessity of a willingness on the part of the leader to do more than he requires of his followers. A pleasing personality. No slovenly, careless person can become a successful leader. Leadership calls for respect. Followers will not respect a leader who does not grade high on all of the factors of a pleasing personality, sympathy, and understanding. The successful leader must be in sympathy with his followers. Moreover, he must understand them and their problems. Mastery of detail. Successful leadership calls for a mastery of the details. Related to the leader's position. Willingness to assume full responsibility. Successful leader must be willing to assume responsibility for the mistakes and the shortcomings of his followers. If he tries to shift this responsibility, he will not remain the leader. If one of his followers makes a mistake and shows himself to be incompetent, the leader must consider that it is he who has failed. Cooperation. The successful leader must understand and apply the principle of cooperative effort and be able to induce his followers to do the same. Leadership calls for power, and power, in turn, calls for cooperation. There are two forms of leadership. The first, and by far the most effective, is leadership by consent, which is achieved with the sympathy of the followers. The second is leadership by force, which is exercised without the consent and sympathy of the followers. History is filled with evidence that leadership by force cannot endure. The downfall and disappearance of dictators and kings is significant. It means that people will not follow forced leadership indefinitely. Figures like Napoleon, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany, the Tsar of Russia, and the King of Spain were all examples of leadership by force. Their leadership passed. Leadership by the consent of the followers is the only brand that can possibly endure. People may follow forced leadership temporarily, but they will not do so willingly. The world has just entered a new era of relationship between leaders and followers, which very clearly calls for new leaders and a new brand of leadership in business and industry. Those who belong to the old school of leadership by force must acquire an understanding of the new brand of leadership, which is cooperation, or they will be relegated to the rank and file of the followers. There is no other way out for them. The relationship of employer and employee, or of leader and follower, in the future will be one of mutual cooperation. It will be based upon an equitable division of the profits of business. In the future, the relationship between employer and employee will be more like a partnership than it has been in the past. The new brand of leadership will embrace the 11 factors of leadership just described, as well as some other factors. The man who makes these principles the basis of his leadership will find abundant opportunity to lead in any walk of life. The recent depression was prolonged in large part because the world lacked a leadership of this new brand. Now, the demand for leaders who are competent to apply these new methods has greatly exceeded the supply. While some of the old type of leaders will reform and adapt themselves, generally speaking, the world will have to look for new timber for its leadership. This necessity may be your opportunity. We come now to the major faults of leaders who fail. It is just as essential to know what not to do as it is to know what to do. Inability to organize details. Efficient leadership demands the ability to organize and master details. No genuine leader is ever too busy to do anything that may be required of him in his capacity as a leader. When any person, whether leader or follower, admits that they are too busy to change their plans or to give attention to an emergency, they are admitting their inefficiency. The successful leader must be the master of all details connected with his position. This means, of course, that he must acquire the habit of delegating details to capable lieutenants. Unwillingness to render humble service. Truly great leaders are willing, when the occasion demands, to perform any sort of labor which they would ask another person to perform. The greatest among these shall be the servant of all, is a profound truth which all able leaders observe and respect. Expectation of pay for what they know, instead of what they do with that which they know. The world does not pay people for what they know. It pays them for what they do, or what they induce others to do. Fear of competition from followers. The leader who fears that one of his followers may take his position is practically sure to realize that fear sooner or later. The able leader trains understudies to whom he may delegate, at will, any of the details of his position. It is only in this way that a leader can multiply himself and prepare himself to be in many places and give attention to many things at one time. It is an eternal truth that people receive more pay for their ability to get others to perform than they could possibly earn by their own efforts. An efficient leader may, through his knowledge and the magnetism of his personality, greatly increase the efficiency of others and induce them to render more and better service than they could without his aid. Lack of imagination. Without imagination, a leader is incapable of meeting emergencies and of creating plans by which to guide his followers. Efficiently. Selfishness. The leader who claims all the honor for the work of his followers is certain to be met with resentment. The truly great leader claims none of the honors. He is content to see the honors, when there are any, go to his followers, because he knows that most people will work harder for commendation and recognition than they will for money alone. Intemperance. Followers do not respect an intemperate leader. Moreover, intemperance in any of its various forms, such as overindulgence in food, drink, or other activities, destroys the endurance and the vitality of all who indulge in it. Disloyalty. Perhaps this should have come at the head of the list. The leader who is not loyal to his trust, to his associates, to those above him, and to those below him, cannot long maintain his leadership. Disloyalty marks one as being less than the dust of the earth and brings down on one's head the contempt he deserves. This lack of loyalty is one of the major causes of failure in every walk of life. Emphasis of the authority of leadership. The efficient leader leads by encouraging, and not by trying to instill fear in the hearts of his followers. The leader who tries to impress his followers with his authority comes within the category of leadership through force. If a leader is a real leader, he will have no need to advertise the fact except by his conduct, his sympathy, his understanding, his fairness, and a demonstration that he knows his job. Emphasis of title. The competent leader requires no title to give him the respect of his followers. The person who makes too much over his title generally has little else to emphasize. The doors to the office of the real leader are open to all who wish to enter, and his working quarters are free from formality or ostentation. These are among the more common of the causes of failure in leadership. Any one of these faults is sufficient to induce failure. You should study this list carefully if you aspire to leadership and make certain that you are free of these faults. Before leaving this topic, your attention is called to a few of the fertile fields in which there has been a decline of leadership, and in which the new type of leader may find an abundance of opportunity. First, in the field of politics, there is a most insistent demand for new leaders. This demand indicates nothing less than an emergency. The majority of politicians, it seems, have become high-grade, legalized racketeers. They have increased taxes and debauched the machinery of industry and business until the people can no longer stand the burden. Second, the banking business is undergoing a reform. The leaders in this field have almost entirely lost the confidence of the public. The bankers have already sensed the need for this reform and have begun it. Third, industry calls for new leaders. The old type of leaders thought and moved in terms of dividends instead of thinking and moving in terms of human equations. The future leader in industry, to endure, must regard himself as a quasi-public official whose duty it is to manage his trust in such a way that it will work hardship on no individual or group of individuals. The exploitation of working men is a thing of the past. Let the person who aspires to leadership in business, industry, or labor remember this. Fourth, the religious leader of the future will be forced to give more attention to the temporal needs of his followers. This includes helping them in the solution of their economic and personal problems of the present, and giving less attention to the dead past and the yet unborn future. Fifth, in the professions of law, medicine, and education, a new brand of leadership, and to some extent, new leaders, will become a necessity. This is especially true in the field of education. The leader in that field must, in the future, find ways and means of teaching people how to apply the knowledge they receive in school. He must deal more with practice and less with theory. Sixth, new leaders will be required in the field of journalism. Newspapers of the future, to be conducted successfully, must be divorced from special privilege and relieved from the subsidy of advertising. They must cease to be organs of propaganda for the interests which patronize their advertising columns. These are but a few of the fields in which opportunities for new leaders and a new brand of leadership are now available. The world is undergoing a rapid change. This means that the media through which the changes in human habits are promoted must be adapted to those changes. The media described here are the ones which, more than any others, determine the trend of civilization. We will now discuss when and how to apply for a position. The information described here is the net result of many years of experience, during which thousands of men and women were helped to market their services effectively. It can, therefore, be relied upon as sound and practical. Experience has proven that the following media offer the most direct and effective methods of bringing the buyer and seller of personal services together. Employment bureaus. Care must be taken to select only reputable bureaus, the management of which can show adequate records of achievement of satisfactory results. There are comparatively few such bureaus. Advertising in newspapers, trade journals, magazines, and radio. Classified advertising may usually be relied upon to produce satisfactory results for those who apply for clerical or ordinary salaried positions. Display advertising is more desirable for those who seek executive connections, with the copy appearing in the section of the paper most apt to come to the attention of the class of employer being sought. The copy should be prepared by an expert who understands how to inject sufficient selling qualities to produce replies. Personal letters of application, directed to particular firms or individuals most apt to need such services as are being offered. Letters should be neatly typed, always, and signed by hand. With the letter, a complete brief or outline of the applicant's qualifications should be sent. Both the letter and the brief should be prepared by an expert. Application through personal acquaintances. When possible, the applicant should endeavor to approach prospective employers through some mutual acquaintance. This method of approach is particularly advantageous for those who seek executive connections and do not wish to appear to be peddling themselves. Application in person. In some instances, it may be more effective if the applicant offers his services personally to prospective employers. In this event, a complete written statement of qualifications for the position should be presented. 4. The reason that prospective employers often wish to discuss one's record with their associates. Now, let us detail the information that should be supplied in your written brief or resume. This brief should be prepared with the same care that a lawyer would use in preparing the brief of a case to be tried in court. Unless you are already experienced in preparing such documents, you should consult an expert and enlist his services for this purpose. Successful merchants employ men and women who understand the art and psychology of advertising to present the merits of their merchandise. A person who has personal services for sale should do the exact same thing. The following information should appear in your brief. Education. State briefly, but definitely, what schooling you have had. Note in what subjects you specialized and give the reasons for that specialization. Experience. If you have had experience in connection with positions similar to the one you are seeking, describe it fully. You must state the names and addresses of your former employers. Be certain to bring out clearly any special experience you may have had which would specifically equip you to fill the position you seek. References. Practically every business firm desires to know all about the previous records and antecedents of prospective employees who are seeking positions of responsibility. You should attach to your brief photostatic copies of letters from former employers, teachers under whom you studied, and prominent people whose judgment may be relied upon. Photograph. Attach a recent, unmounted photograph of yourself to your brief. Apply for a specific position. You must avoid a general application for just a position. That indicates you lack specialized qualifications. Always describe exactly what particular position you are seeking. State your qualifications. Give full details as to the reason you believe you are qualified for the particular position you seek. This is the most important detail of your application. It will determine, more than anything else, what consideration you receive. Offer to go to work on probation. This may appear to be a radical suggestion, but experience has proven that it seldom fails to win at least a trial. If you are determined to have the position, it can be most effective to offer to work for a week, or a month, or for a sufficient length of time to enable your prospective employer to judge your value without pay. If you are sure of your qualifications, a trial is all you need. Incidentally, such an offer indicates that you have supreme confidence in your ability to fill the position. It is highly convincing. Make it clear that your offer is based upon your confidence in your ability. Your confidence in your prospective employer's decision to hire you after a trial, and your determination to have the position you seek. Knowledge of your prospective employer's business. Before applying for a position, you must do sufficient research to thoroughly familiarize yourself with that business, indicating your brief and knowledge you have acquired in this field. This will be impressive, as it will show that you have imagination and a real interest in the position. Remember, it is not the lawyer who knows the most law who wins, but the one who best prepares his case. If your case is properly prepared and presented, your victory will be more than half won from the outset. Do not be afraid of making your brief too long. Employers are just as interested in purchasing the services of well-qualified applicants as you are in securing employment. The success of most employers is due, in the main, to their ability to select well-qualified lieutenants. They want all the information available. Also, neatness in the preparation of your brief will indicate that you are a painstaking person. When your brief is completed, have it neatly bound and lettered by an artist or printer. This personal touch is sure to command attention. Have it typed or mimeographed on the finest paper you can obtain. Your photograph should be pasted on one of the pages. Successful salesmen groom themselves with care. They understand that first impressions are lasting. Your brief is your salesman. Give it a good suit of clothes so it will stand out in bold contrast. If the position you seek is worth having, it is worth going after with care. Now, let's discuss how to get the exact position you desire. Everyone enjoys doing the kind of work for which he is best suited. An artist loves to work with paints, a craftsman with his hands. A writer loves to write. This nation offers a full range of occupations, from tilling the soil to manufacturing, marketing, and the professions. First, decide exactly what kind of a job you want. If that job doesn't already exist, perhaps you can create it. Second, choose the company or individual for whom you wish to work. Third, study your prospective employer as to their policies, personnel, and chances for advancement. Fourth, by analyzing yourself, your talents, and your capabilities, figure out what you can offer. Plan the ways and means of giving advantages, services, developments, or ideas that you believe you can successfully deliver. Fifth, forget about a job. Forget whether or not there is an opening. Forget the usual routine of asking, "Have you got a job for me?" Concentrate on what you can give. Sixth, once you have your plan in mind, arrange with an experienced writer to put it on paper in neat form and in full detail. Seventh, present this plan to the proper person with authority, and he will do the rest. Every company is looking for people who can give something of value, whether it be ideas, services, or connections. Every company has room for the person who has a definite plan of action that is to the advantage of that company. This line of procedure may take a few extra days or weeks, but the difference in income, advancement, and recognition will save you years of hard work at small pay. It has many advantages, the main one being that it will often save from 1 to 5 years of time in reaching a chosen goal. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Matthew 6:33. May the Lord bless you and guide you in every good work.